कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, normally whenever I start a class, I thank people for their attendance. I have to thank you all for your patience also today. So, thank you for being here today. And I'll speak today on the topic of how free is our free will. We all have some free will with which we can meant to use it constructively to choose wisely. So in the Mahabharata, when it happens that Duryodhan is adamantly refusing for any compromise with the Pandavas, he is rejecting every peace proposal. At that time, Krishna himself goes. So there is this terrible war about to happen, and Krishna is trying his best to avoid the war. Duryodhana has time and time again antagonized the Pandavas, persecuted them, tried to dishonor their wife, dispossess them of their kingdom. The Pandavas have every reason to be angry with him. But still it is they who are seeking peace. Normally, if we have done something wrong, and other person is angry with us, then usually the person who has offended is the person who is meant to seek peace. Maybe apologize, seek some compromise, seek some understanding. So imagine if somebody has offended someone else and the other person, instead of taking offense, is trying to seek some compromise. So now we would consider that that person has to be very mature to do that. And if that other person doesn't even acknowledge that I did anything wrong, so then it becomes outrageous. So when everybody's verdict is that Duryodhan is doing something seriously wrong and he needs to correct himself, he needs to stop acting the way he is acting. So when everybody's verdict is that he should not act the way he's acting, then finally he takes recourse, says, why are you blaming me? I am simply acting according to my nature. If anyone is to be blamed, blame the Creator who gave me my nature. Blame the Creator who gave me my nature. So I travel across the world, so I was in a community where everybody was very upset with the leader, because the leader would get angry and just yell at everyone. Everybody is feeling hurt by that. So when I talked with the leader, he said, I don't have any anger issues. People just need to stop making me angry. So if they started listening to what I was doing, then I wouldn't get angry. So it's very easy to outsource blame for our actions to someone else. But when we outsource the blame, we also outsource the power. Because to the extent we accept responsibility, to that extent we have the power to make some change. But if we consider that this is the nature, as Duryodhana was saying, this is my nature, this is the way I am. Why blame me? Blame the Creator. So then, what is happening over here? Then he loses all power to change for the better. So basically, there are many different views, but I'll focus on two distinct views. That there is the way we behave, the kind of nature that we have, Say somebody is short-tempered, somebody is very easily gets depressed, somebody gets everybody has different kinds of emotional and behavioral ways of functioning. So this could be said to be, like he was saying, this is destiny. So there are three broad views with two extremes, that the way we are is destiny, the way we are, that's one extreme. The other extreme is the way we are is a decision. And the third is the way we are is a disease. So destiny, decision and disease. So decision means, say somebody is an alcoholic. You took the desire, you took the drink, so it's your decision. Yes, it is a decision. So normally, whenever somebody does something wrong, the normal human way of functioning is that we expect them to take responsibility for their actions. You should not have done like this. Why did you do like that? So normally, we implicitly acknowledge that people are responsible for their decisions. So if somebody behaves wrongly, normally we would start with the idea that it's a decision and you made a bad decision, which is true. However, it's not just that. What happens, every decision that we take, it is not just that course of action we are following. It's almost like every decision is a subconscious commitment to a similar future decision. That means if somebody has acted in a particular way, somebody thinks, I'm going to drink once, and they take alcohol. Now it's a one-time event taking alcohol, but it's not just a one-time event, because that action creates an impression within. And once that impression is created, then immediately that will come as a proposition. When it comes as a proposition, it's very difficult to say no. It's possible, but the proposition comes quite forcefully. And the more often the person does that decision, the more easily, forcefully that proposition comes up. Say, you can take an example. Suppose somebody has visited has surfed on the net and they visit a particular website. Suppose they visit Bollywood.com. And they repeatedly visit Bollywood.com. Now they come to a spiritual program and they hear about the Bhagavad Gita. They say, oh, Bhagavad Gita. So I want to know more about it. Then they go on Google and they type in their browser bar, Bhagavad Gita. They type B. And what happens? Immediately Bollywood comes up over there. So they had no intention of going to Bollywood at that time, but B becomes the stimulus for Bollywood. Now somebody who has never visited Bollywood earlier, for them they type B, that might not come at all. So we could say that initially visiting a particular, so our mind is like that. Every action that we do, it creates an impression. Just like our browser stores certain choices, and those choices come as propositions. So when a proposition becomes very forceful, then that person almost by default goes in that direction. So from what was a decision, gradually something becomes like a default. It's not, there's no conscious decision required to go to Bollywood. Sometimes some people say their homepage itself might be Bollywood.com. So as soon as you touch the browser, what opens is Bollywood.com. Say, so for example, somebody has become an alcoholic, such an alcoholic, as soon as they wake up in the morning, the first thing they think is, where's the drink? I want to drink. So what has happened? From the moment of waking, the homepage of their mind's browser is alcohol. Conversely, so at this point, it is no longer just a decision. Of course, it's a decision in the sense that even if that homepage is opened up, they can close this and they can go somewhere else. But for them, much greater effort is required as compared to someone for whom there is no impression like that. Somebody has not visited Bollywood, somebody has not drunk alcohol. When they wake up, they may not get any thought of alcohol at all. So everything we could say begins as a decision. But at present where people are, it might not be a decision. So when we keep doing something repeatedly, it moves from the decision side further. So for an alcoholic, any problem in life, first thought is, how can I drink? How can I get a drink? So it's moving towards, so then it becomes a disease. Disease means it is something which is present already. And we see Krishna also talks about this in two different ways in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about kama, the kama can specifically refer to lust, but in general, if we see, the question that Arjuna is asking over there is that he begins with athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purusha anichchanapi varishneya baladivani yojitaha. What impels us to do something wrong? Now that we could say it's not just lust that impels us to do wrong. Greed also impels us. Anger also impels us. Envy also impels us. So when Krishna is talking here about self-destructive desires, and he uses the word generic calm to refer to that. So now, interestingly, now if we consider the lust or anger or greed or envy, are these just emotions that we feel? I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling greedy right now. So is it just an emotion that we feel that's come up within us? Yeah, we will normally say it's like that. But Krishna also says this kama is already situated somewhere. Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhisthana muchyate etair vimohayatesha jnanamavritya dehinam. So in 340 he says that this self-destructive desire is situated in the senses, the mind and the intelligence. That means we could say it is not just a decision that we are making. Just like if somebody has a disease, then the germs of the disease or the tumor or whatever it is, there is a malignant presence already there, separate from the decision of the person. So this is the stage where we are at with respect to particular arthas that are troubling us. It's not just a decision that we are making, it's a disease. So lust or anger or greed, they are not just I get angry. Yes, I get angry, that's true, but it's not just that I get angry in the sense that is the time when anger is created or generated. Anger is already there as an impression and something stimulates that anger. So we could say anger, so some people are more short-tempered than others. That means what? That the impression of anger is already stored strongly within them. And even short-tempered people, it's not that they're always disagreeable or always rude or always rough. A normal behavior, they might be just gentlemanly, sweet. But when they get angry, it's like they seem to transform into someone else. Where did my friend go? Who are you? We start saying like that. So what has happened is that when this gets stimulated, it just takes over the person. So this is where it has become a disease. And now sometimes if a person keeps repeatedly choosing something, then it's no longer a disease, it can seem like destiny. This is how I am, I've tried to change, I can't change, and this is how I'm going to be. So some people try to change themselves and they try and it doesn't work, and they try again and it doesn't work. And I met one devotee, he said, I have finally developed renunciation. Oh really? What do you mean? I have developed renunciation for renunciation. I have given up now the attempts to give up anything. Give up that which is bad. So sometimes we just feel I just can't change this. I give up. So now at that point it can seem like destiny. So now which of these is Duryodhana was saying this is the way I am. So the way he is saying this is why I was made, this is the destiny, this is my destiny, I can't change it. So we have, what are the three things I discussed till now? First is decision. Second is disease, destiny. So now there are, thank you, there are some things quite animated reply. Yeah. So now there are, we could say, a lot of things about us which we may want to change. And some of them are very important. Some of them are good if we change them, but they're not important. And in some of them, the effort to change is so much that we will feel it's not worth it. So it all works according to how easy or how difficult we find something and how essential it is. So now if we try to change everything about ourselves, then we get so overwhelmed. I just can't do this, and we just lose hope and lose heart. So yes, there are many things about us which either we can say it's not possible to change, or it's so difficult to change that it may not be worth it. But it depends. The Bhagavad Gita includes both these aspects. That there is something about us which is destined. So if you consider this I talked about 336 to 43, but before that if you consider 333, 34, 35. So there first Krishna says that actually everybody has their swabhava, their nature according to Varna Ashrama. And he says that you cannot change that. First he says that Shreyan, this is 335, Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna Paradharmat Swanishtitat Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. He says doing some activity according to somebody else's nature, it's not possible. You try to do it, it'll just be a waste of time. And more categorically he says that Indriyasya Indriyasyarthe Ragadveshav Vyavasthitau Tayor Navashamagachet Tau Yasya Paripanthinau. And he says, the next verse he says that Nigraha Kim Karishyasi. In that Nigraha, what can repression accomplish? Sadrusham Cheshtate Swasya Prakriter Jnanavanapi Prakritim Yanti Bhutani Nigraha Kim Karishyati. Everybody acts according to their nature, even those who are in knowledge act according to their nature. So what can repression accomplish? So there is a spiritual teacher in India, spiritual in double codes. So he is well known across the world. He had this idea from sensuality to spirituality. Not by giving up sensuality to go to spirituality, but by diving deep into sensuality, you'll go to spirituality. So he called it as Sambhog to Samadhi. So now he was asked what is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And he said the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is something which all of India has forgotten. And what is it? The essence of the Bhagavad Gita is this one line. Nigraha Kim Karishyasi. What can repression accomplish? Just do what you desire. That is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, you have to see everything is in context. Just as I said, the verse before that Krishna is saying, there are attachment and aversion which is situated in the sense objects. Do not come under their control. Indriyasya Indriyasyarthe Ragadveshav Vyavasthitau. They are situated over there. But Tayor Navashamagachet. Don't come under their control. Tau Yasya Paripanthinau. They are obstacles on your path. Paripanthinau means thieves. Pantha is path, Pari is stealers. So robbers, they are thieves on the path of life. So just one verse before this, Krishna is saying you have to control yourself. And in fact, the whole section after that is about sense control. So what Krishna is saying Nigraha Kim Karishyati doesn't mean that if somebody feels lust or anger or greed or envy, they say Nigraha Kim Karishyasi. What will repression accomplish? No, Krishna is talking there about our nature in terms of Varna. Says Arjuna is a Kshatriya. And Krishna is telling Arjuna as a Kshatriya, if you try to act like a Brahmana, that is not going to work. A Kshatriya is meant to rule, to delegate, to get things done. Kshatriyas, basically Kshatriyas have a desire and a need to change things for the better. Broadly in life there are two drives. One drive is to change things for the better in the outer world. The other drive is change ourselves for the better, so that you tolerate things. Now the Kshatriyas are driven primarily by changing things for the better. And Brahmanas are driven primarily by change your inner world, tolerate. Now both are required. Both are required in our lives. There are many things which you just learn to tolerate it, change yourself, grow. But it's not everything like that. Prabhupada did not think that, okay, nobody is interested in Krishna consciousness, I'll change myself and I'll alone be Krishna conscious. Prabhupada tried very hard, and when it didn't work in India, he came to America. So there are times when we need to act like a Kshatriya. Prabhupada said that for our movement to grow, we need Brahmanas with a Kshatriya spirit. We need Brahmanas but with a Kshatriya spirit. So Brahmanas means rooted in spiritual knowledge, but also the desire to transform the world is there. So anyway, what Krishna is telling Arjuna is that in this context, that you are a Kshatriya, you are meant to rule. And if you try to act like a Brahmana, just forgive all the atrocities, just let things go. That's not going to work. You think now you will be able to give it up, but eventually your nature will come up. And then, if you are as a Kshatriya, you are acting assertively, you are doing dharma. But if you become like a Brahmana and then you start acting aggressively, that will be adharma for you. So that means Krishna does acknowledge that there may be some things, that there are some things for us in the category of destiny. A person who is a person who is very good at music, and somebody who has no sense of music. And no matter how much somebody who has no sense of music practices, they are not going to become like a Mozart or somebody like that. Earlier I used to also sing kirtans. And whenever I used to sing kirtans, all the devotees would pass the mridanga and kartal to each other. There are different. Sometimes you are singing out of tune and you know you are singing out of tune, but sometimes you don't even know you are singing out of tune. Then what to do? Then one senior devotee told me that I think singing is a service you can postpone to your next life. So some things, of course I have not lost hope. Maybe destiny maybe destiny can change, but there are some things if we try to change we just can't. If somebody has a nature of being introvert, and if they try to be too much like an extrovert, it's like some people come to a party or a get together and they have a smile on their face, and the more people they meet, their smile becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. They're so happy to meet more and more people. And some people, they come with a smile, and the more people they meet, the smile becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. When can I leave now? I've had enough. So an introvert, it's very difficult for them to entirely become like an extrovert. So there are some things which may be destined and we can't change them. But Krishna doesn't say that the lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion within us, they fall in that category. They fall in the category of where we can change them. So some aspects, yes, they are destined. So Arjuna is a Kshatriya, he cannot suddenly become like a Brahmana. But how much possessive we are, how much greedy we are, how much short-tempered we are, this can be changed. So there are some things which are in the category of destiny, but the irresponsible attitude is to put everything that we feel I can't change or we don't want to change into the category of destiny. When we do that, then what happens? We just can't improve ourselves. So I started by saying that I'm talking about how free is our free will. So for a Kshatriya, also their free will is free, but to act like a Kshatriya. Now an introvert can also serve Krishna in a wonderful way, but as an introvert. For them to serve Krishna as an extrovert or do anything in life as an extrovert is going to be difficult. So that means the free will is still there. Now somebody might be a Kshatriya and they might be a Kshatriya like Arjuna, or they can be a Kshatriya like Duryodhana. Both are Kshatriyas, but Duryodhana was having envy, was having greed. So that means we could say the river of their consciousness is going to flow in a particular channel. They can't change that channel. But how it flows, it's up to them. Whether they were going to flow in a way that is dharmic, that is virtuous, or let it flow in a way that is vicious. Some people have a need to be in charge. Now if they are competent, then it is better that they be in charge. If you are cooking food and some people are really good at cooking, then let them lead the cooking. Everybody will get the good product by that. So those who are competent, if they take charge, then everybody benefits by that. But some people want to take charge not because they are competent, but because they are domineering, even if they are not good. So hierarchies are essential in life, but hierarchy should be based on competence. If the hierarchy becomes based simply on dominance without competence, then it becomes tyrannical, and then there is rebellion. So Krishna is saying that there is this part, you can't change that. So there is a part of yours which is destined, but as far as the greed, the anger, the lust within us, that can be changed, that needs to be changed if you want to create a better future for ourselves. So one category we might say is destined. Agreed. Now, so to say that everything about us is destined is irresponsible. At the same time, to say that everything about someone is a decision is insensitive. Because something might be very easy for us to do, and the same thing for someone else might be very difficult. And we say, why don't you do this? Why are you just being so mental about it? But for them it's not just being mental. For them it is extremely difficult to do it. So if you just you just need more willpower, more determination, more courage. Well, yes, that's required, but that alone is not enough for them. Because for them it's not just a decision. It is, there is a disease involved over there. So for example, somebody is a habitual alcoholic and they want to give up alcohol. Now of course they will have to take the decision. Now even when there is a disease, for curing the disease also decision is required. I want to get cured of this. But when there is a disease, just the decision alone is not enough. Along with the decision, a process is required. It's like if somebody has got cough. Now sometimes we all might cough a little bit, but it just comes and goes. And sometimes it's just a light cough and we say, okay, I don't want to disturb, or we just repress it also. It goes away. But somebody has got a disease cough and they feel like coughing. And then they say, willpower, will not cough. I will not cough. Well, how long can you use willpower like that? It's a disease. So you cannot repress it like that. If it's a disease, it needs a process to be dealt with. That's a medicine. So the same, say somebody might be short-tempered and they just make a decision, I'm not going to yell at you, or I'm not going to do this. Somebody is alcoholic and they decide and they give up. Now when I talk about these three things, decision, disease and destiny, it's in real life it's not this black and white category. Something might be on the decision side but tilting towards the disease side. Somebody might be much more on the disease side and a little bit on the decision side. So for some people, they might just decide, I'm going to stop this, and the next day they stop it. So many people nowadays become vegetarians. They might have been eating meat for a long time, but they come to know about how brutal it is when animals are killed, and they decide, I don't want to eat. And they're able to give up. Although it's a deeply ingrained habit, but they decide and they give up. But some people might find it very difficult, maybe to change a particular dietary habit. So in that case, it might be like a disease. So somebody gets diabetes and they say, I'm going to stop eating sweets. And they stop it immediately. But some people, for them, it's very difficult to stop. So when we start saying for you, it's just you just don't have willpower, just take that decision, we might be insensitive. Why? Because in our browser, there is no prompting coming. And that's why for us, it's just a simple decision. But in their browser, the prompting might be coming very forcefully. And when the prompting comes very forcefully, at that time, they need a process to change that. And what is the process? The process broadly involves three parts, with which I'll conclude and then we can have some questions. If we consider when a browser is giving autocomplete, say Bollywood.com. Now I want to go to BhagavadGita.com. So first aspect is mechanical. Okay, although Bollywood is coming, is deleted and type Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, mechanically, a particular thought, a particular desire, a particular prompting will come, but mechanically to say no to it and mechanically push ourselves in the other direction. There is no inner change, but at least externally we go along. Externally, okay, this is what I am going to do, I do it. Although internally, I am not feeling like it. The second change you could say is a little technical change. Technical change is where you go in the browser settings and you delete that as a preference. Then if you delete that as a preference, if it is saved as a bookmark or something, then it may not come that automatically. And the third change would be gradual. Gradual is where we repeatedly choose Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita. Then eventually when you type B, automatically Bhagavad Gita will come. So to give another example to illustrate this is, say, floor. Suppose this floor were inclined like that and we have some electronic equipments over there. So we don't want water to go over there. When water falls, because the floor is inclined, the water will automatically go in that direction. Now if we don't want the water to go in that direction, we have to do three things. First is redirection. So we have to have some mop or something by which we forcibly push the water in the other direction. That's purely a mechanical process. By the mechanical, we push the water. That's first thing, redirection. Actually, even before we can do the redirection, we can have a restriction. Okay, build some small tiny wall over there, by which even if the water is flowing in the direction, it doesn't reach there. So there's a restriction which blocks the flow of the water in that direction. There's redirection which pushes the water in the other direction. And the third sustainable solution would be reconstruction. Just change the floor so that it's flow inclined in this way. That the water will not go in that direction, the water will go in this direction. So we could say something similar applies in our inner world also. We often use the word, I've got an inclination for this. Now inclination at a physical level refers to the tilt of a floor or a road. At an inner level also it can mean the same thing. We have inclination means that as soon as we have nothing to do, our thoughts are inclined toward that. Some people have inclination, as soon as they get some free time, let me look at the news. Let me watch some sports. Let me watch some movies. Let me do this. We all have certain inclinations like that. So those inclinations means one simple way to know our inclination is to see what we do when we have nothing to do. That shows our default, our inclinations, our attachments. That shows where our consciousness flows. So then, if we know it's going to flow in this direction, then create some restriction. Restriction means, just say if somebody is an alcoholic and they want to give up alcohol. Suppose their house is right next to a bar. Then no matter how much willpower they exercise, it's going to be very difficult. So restriction, create some distance. Don't stay there. You have to change your house or do something like that by which when the desire pops up, then okay, I'm not going to do this. For us to think about that and to decide that also takes time. But if there is no restriction and the desire pops up and we do it and it's done already. So the desire to drink comes and the bar is next there, we just go and drink. So that's how it happens. So in that case, create some restriction. This is not how I want to act. Now restriction could also mean restrict in terms of whom we associate with. Now Duryodhan, if you go back to the starting point of this, Duryodhan had a demoniac nature right from birth. So some part of it was destined. He was not exactly destined, but there was a disease with him. That he had that envy, he had that greed, he had that dark impressions within him right from birth. That's why there was a lot of inauspiciousness when he was born. But that did not mean from disease he had to go to a destiny. But what happened? Instead of restricting, he actually indulged. Oh, there was nobody to, either we have to restrict ourselves or we need someone to restrict us. But Dhritarashtra was too weak to restrict him. And Bhishma and Drona, although Bhishma was a great soul, Vidura was a great soul, he did not value their association. And instead, he valued the association of Shakuni. Shakuni was a person who, instead of building a fence, breaking the fence. Just gave more and more ideas about how to be envious, how to be vicious, how to be malicious. And then, without that restriction, he just ruined himself by that. So restriction, then redirection. Redirection means whenever our consciousness starts going in a particular direction, instead of just saying, no, I will not think about this, I will not do this. That is very difficult. It's like the water is flowing in this direction, you tell the water, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. It's no use. The water is going to flow in that direction. So we need something that we can do by which our thoughts can go elsewhere. So usually if we consider our life, there are certain things which we like to do and certain things which are good for us. And often these two circles, we may think that they are completely non-overlapping. But it's not that they are entirely non-intersecting. Some places it intersects. So we may like music and there is spiritual music. So we may like any kind of music, but spiritual music may be good for us. So we find out something which is at the intersection of the two. And that becomes like our mop for pushing the water. When our consciousness starts going in a particular direction, if I just say, I'll not think about this, I'll not do this, that will not work for long. We will say, I will not do it, I will not do it, and our mind will come quietly with an eraser. It will come with an eraser and it will erase the knot. I will not do it, I will not do it, I will do it. It will become like that. So therefore, what we need to do is, we need to have something else to do. Something to push the water of our consciousness in another direction. And each of us has to find out what that will be for us. Now, of course, we can say it can be chanting, and chanting is very powerful. But at that moment, if that doesn't consume it doesn't capture our consciousness, doesn't engage our consciousness, then what happens is, it's like we have the mop, we are pushing the mop, but the water is going here and we are pushing the mop there. It doesn't help much. It has to, chanting is a very powerful process for raising our consciousness toward Krishna. But chanting has to engage with our consciousness. If it is not, if our consciousness is not involved in chanting, then the basically tongue is uttering the mantra. So what happens? The tongue is chanting, the mind is wandering, and the soul is thinking which to choose. And the soul inevitably goes with the mind. So we need something which engages our consciousness and which pushes. And gradually, the last part is, what is the last part? You remember? Restriction, redirection and reconstruction. Yes. Reconstruction means gradually, if we keep doing the right thing, we keep practicing bhakti, by that fresh habits will develop. And once the habits develop, then the water of our consciousness will naturally flow in a healthy direction. And that's why actually at one level, good habits, they often seem very difficult to develop. And sometimes we may do it for a day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but there's so much struggle involved. I think I have to struggle like this for the rest of my life. How can I do it? It's too much for me. So it's not that like that. Yes, there is some amount of struggle, but gradually, as the good habit gets developed, the habit starts working for us instead of against us. Right now, when we are trying to develop a good habit, the bad habit is working against us. Or basically our habits are working against us because right now we have a bad habit. But if you just keep doing repeatedly, gradually develop a habit. It's like I type B, each time Bollywood comes. But I keep typing B and typing Bhagavad Gita, then gradually Bhagavad Gita will come. And once it comes over there, then that's how we get transformed. So for us to free our free will, what do we need to do? We need to acknowledge that some things may be destined, I can't change them. But don't assume everything is destined. And when we are trying to change someone, don't assume that everything is just a decision. Recognize that some things may be disease for them, something may be destiny also. Let it be understanding. And then we choose which when we are trying to change ourselves, when we are trying to free our free will, let's begin with what we think is achievable for us. Okay, this, I can do this. I want to wake up in the morning, but that's too difficult. I can't do that. Okay, but I want to read Bhagavatam every day. I want to read Shastra every day. Okay, that I can do. Maybe at least 10 minutes I can do. So comparatively, waking up in the morning is impossible. This difficult but possible. So we start with that which falls in the category of decision. And then as we can do it, as we see ourselves changing, that also increases our confidence. And it's not just our confidence in our capacity. When we are practicing the process of bhakti, it's also our confidence in the process of bhakti. Because when we are trying to, now all that I talked about till now was more or less mechanical. But when we start practicing bhakti, we are connecting with Krishna. And Krishna, what he does is, if he sees that we want to change, if he sees that we want to cultivate the positive impressions, we want to eliminate the negative impressions, then he can work much faster than what we can. So we just show him, I want to do this, and he will use his omnipotence to both, on one side, empower our right decisions and to disempower our wrong impressions. And thus, the transformation at one level, anybody can do it if they just apply the process. Just cultivate a new habit. But with respect to bhakti, it's not just we cultivating a new habit. It is Krishna empowering us. So, cultivating any new habit is difficult. It's like lifting a heavy weight. And it requires effort. But when we practice bhakti, it's like the process of bhakti is like a lever. When we use that lever, then also we have to exercise. We have to use our energy, exert our energy to lift the weight. But by a lever, if I can lift up 20 kg weight, but if I have a lever, with applying weight on the lever, I might be able to lift a 100 kg weight. So bhakti is like that lever. We also have to apply ourselves in bhakti. But in terms of effort and returns, if instead of trying ourselves without having God in our lives, without having Krishna in our lives, if we bring Krishna into our lives and try to connect with him. So the good habit that we develop is not just some good habit at a material level, but the good habit of connecting with Krishna. Then he will empower our free will, and he will empower our decision, and he will disempower the unhealthy impressions. And that's how the transformation can happen much faster. And all of us can free our free will more and more, so that we can freely live the life that Krishna wants us to live. A life where whatever abilities we have, whatever resources we have, we use them fully to make a contribution in the world, use them fully to bring about purification of our own hearts, and ultimately to be united with him in his eternal abode. So I'll summarize what I spoke today. I spoke on the topic of how free is our free will. So I started by quoting Duryodhana's example, that Duryodhana said, this is just my nature, the way I am. Why are you blaming me? Blame the creator. So then we discussed, is it that the way we are is that's what destiny or God has made us? So we talked about three categories. What are the three categories? Decision, disease and destiny. Yeah. So now some people may say that you are an alcoholic, you're just deciding to drink, that's all. Yes, that is true. But everybody, when we keep doing something, it doesn't remain a decision. Krishna talks about karma, self-destructive desire. First he says, you have to give up karma. That means he's talking about decision, make the decision. But then he also says, independent of your decision, that desire is present within your mind, intelligence and ego. That means it's an impression. So like somebody is browsing some sites which they don't want to browse. Then they have to make the decision. But if the decision is not enough, if they have browsed before, the preferences are already stored over there. So there is something which is independent of our decision, which might be present in some and not present in others. That indicates it's a disease. Now, for non-alcoholics, the idea of drinking might not come, but for alcoholics, it might come as a very strong proposition. And then, if they just keep giving in, then even from that disease, it can go toward destiny. It might appear as if it's just not changeable. So then, I talked about, are some things about us not changeable? Yes. We discussed how we have our core swabhava, like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or we could talk in terms of introvert, extrovert. Certain changes might be in terms of abilities. Some people may just not have particular abilities, but those don't define us primarily. Krishna says, don't nigraha kim karishas. It will be very difficult to change. That means the consciousness is going to go along that channel, but let it go in a regulated way according to dharma. So Arjuna was a Kshatriya and Krishna told him you can't become a Brahmana, but be a virtuous Kshatriya, not a vicious Kshatriya like Duryodhana. So we have to choose our battles. This is too difficult to change, or it's not worth trying to change it. So we leave that for the time being, and then we look at the things which can be changed. And for changing, what are the three things I talked about? Restriction, redirection, reconstruction. Yeah, thank you. So restriction means that whatever provokes us, whatever agitates us, we create some external restriction for that, so that we don't go in that direction. So an alcoholic doesn't stay close to a bar. If somebody has diabetes, they don't want to give up eating sugar, don't keep sweets right close to you. Whatever, restriction. Then redirection is like the water is flowing in a particular direction, create a wall, then push the water. So for pushing the water in another direction, we need to find something which is good and which we like to do. If it's only good, but we don't like to do it, then we won't get engaged in it. And it's like we are pushing the mop, but the water is flowing in the opposite direction still from elsewhere, because we are pushing elsewhere. So we need to find out some positive activity which can engage our consciousness, and then it can push us. We can use that, and whenever the default starts coming up, we push it back. We push it back using that activity. That's redirection. And gradually what will happen is reconstruct. Just like somebody chooses Bhagavad Gita again and again and again. Then so in terms of the browser, I talked about mechanical, technical, and transformational. So mechanical is just don't visit that site even if it pops up. Technical is change the preferences. And transformational is just by repeated habit, the old preference doesn't come at all. So if we keep doing the right thing, gradually the flow of our consciousness will become inclined differently. And once it inclined positively, then now the good habit, which seems requiring a lot of effort to develop, will become easier and easier. And we could say this process can be done anybody who is not spiritual also. But if we are spiritual, if we are connected with Krishna, then Krishna empowers us to make the right decisions. And Krishna disempowers the wrong impressions within us. And thus, by Krishna's grace, it becomes much easier to free our free will. It is like lifting a heavy weight, that's how changing ourselves is. But bhakti is like a lever by which the same effort can give us much greater returns. So to say that everything about me is destined, as Duryodhana was saying is irresponsible. To say everything about someone is a decision, that is being insensitive, that is being unrealistic. But to say, okay, some things are destined, leave them as they are. Some things, so we start with that which we think is doable for us, is a decision, and start doing that, and as our confidence in ourselves and in the process of bhakti to transform us increases, then that which is a disease can also be transformed. So thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
We always talk about when we talk about decision disease and destiny.
Yes.
We're always talking about negative things like drugs, alcohol, the like. What about workaholics? What about those people that work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week? They miss out on enjoyment of life. They miss out on family. They miss out on taking care of themselves. They miss out on, just general life things that we go through. We never talk about, stuff that seems in a positive way. Like,
oh yeah.
You might be, a nuclear scientist trying to figure out how to split the atom in a completely different way. What's wrong with that?
That's true. Yes, we don't talk about workaholism so much, only about negative things like alcoholism. Yeah, workaholism has been called as the prestigious addiction. Normally, somebody is addict, people look down upon them. Somebody is alcoholic, drug addict. But workaholism is a prestigious addiction. In society, if somebody works very hard, I have never taken a leave for the last 10 years. Oh, how dedicated you are. Now, of course, we're not recommending being irresponsible over here, but the point is that a lot of how we live is shaped by the people around us. And if the people around us are people who are workaholics, then our life becomes like a competition among workaholics. And then in order to feel valued, to feel respected, we will have to become a bigger workaholic than others. So then we need to have the association of people who are not like that. Yes, work is important in life, but when it becomes workaholism, that is when it has become like a cancer. This is how we can also understand the difference between ambition and greed. Ambition is natural. Everybody has ambition. Everybody wants to grow in their lives. So it's like all of us were simple one cell unicellular organisms at one time, and now we are grown up to be fully grown human beings with billions of cells in our body. It's natural that we grow. However, cancer is also growth, but cancer is growth that is disproportionate and destructive. So similarly, for all of us, we want to grow. We want to grow physically, we want to grow socially, have more relationship, know more people. We want to grow financially. We want to grow spiritually. We want to grow in all walks of life. And that's natural. Growth is a normal condition of life. But what is normal is proportionate growth, not disproportionate growth. So when somebody becomes so obsessed with their job that they neglect their family, they neglect their health, they neglect their spirituality, then that they may be growing in their career, but that is like a cancerous growth. It grows and it can look very impressive for people. But some people who are phenomenally successful in their lives, they are also tragically lonely because they've just had no time to invest in any relationships. And sometimes you might get to the top and you have a big house, but the big house only offers you the privilege of a lot of place in which to feel lonely. So what is the use of that? So yes, that's also an addiction, and that we need to guard against it. Does that answer your question? What was that your question, or your question was something else?
I'm going to say you've answered my question. Are there other levels to it that I'm still questioning? Yes, but that might be too much of a question for right now.
Sure, you can ask, no problem.
I want to put this the right way.
You never going to ask?
Sure, you can.
Now to think about it, we can come back to you.
Please.
Sure. Any other questions? Any comments, Prabhu?
There's so many things. I like the class very much. I don't remember his old disease and all that stuff. But
The mic.
started out in the class
when you first started out in the class, I don't remember what you were saying, but I remember I had some ideas. It was about, well, with Duryodhana, and he felt that that's the way he was born. Actually, I'm thinking about other things too. With Srila Prabhupada, of course, okay, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. It seems like in those days people seem to be practically what they're born into, not necessarily, because we have other examples of Dronacharya's son,
Ashwatthama.
Ashwatthama, who was a relative of a Brahmin, Brahmabandhu,
Yeah.
because he didn't have the qualities of a Brahmin. So, but in general, you were born in those days. Nowadays, I don't know if people so much have, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Brahmin. I don't know if those categories are as strong as they were years ago.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, because Prabhupada once, someone said, well, it's my nature or something. And Prabhupada said, you can change your nature. And then I'm thinking also about, was it Vishwamitra Muni,
Yeah.
Wasn't he a Kshatriya?
And he became a Brahmana, yes.
Yeah. So it seems like people can change even that, which I think you were kind of saying that you can't change that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm not sure if you can or you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not telling anybody to try and change that, but just,
Yeah,
there
it's true.
seems to be some exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Is it right? Okay. This is a lever. So I was trying to push from here. You press from here, it's much easier. Thank you. So, today three parts. I think the question first is that today people may not be in that kind of categorization of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra fully. And Prabhupada also said that whatever is your nature, you can change that. And we have examples of Vishwamitra who's changed his nature also. Yes, at one level we could say that a lot more about us is changeable than what we think is. But sometimes the effort required for that might be so much that it may just discourage people. So in the Bhagavad Gita's context, if we consider overall the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, when the Pandavas were living in the forest, they were living like Brahmanas. In fact, the first time when they went to the forest, they lived as Brahmanas. They disguised themselves as Brahmanas at that time, when they were attempted to be burnt. And so that was not just it was for more than a few days. It was months or years. And the second time also, when they went to the forest, largely they were living like Brahmanas. They were sitting and hearing some spiritual subject matters, and of course they would go out and sometimes eliminate some demons, but that was only occasional. So they were not really ruling a kingdom. So they had that Brahmanical, they could be Brahmanas if they wanted to be. So in that sense we could say that in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, what Krishna is telling Arjuna is that your basic disposition is of a Kshatriya. And that was also what was required for him to do dharma at that time. His dharma, his duty was to establish law and order in society. And for that he had to fight against those who were disrupting the law and order. And if at that time he starts acting as a Brahmana, then that will not work. Now, if say some crazed gunman is going around shooting people indiscriminately, and then the police come with a gun, and the police say, no, actually I cannot kill anyone, I want to be non-violent. Well, you may want to be non-violent, but being non-violent, when you are expected to stop the non-violent, that is actually violence. So in that context, what Krishna told is, you cannot act like a Brahmana over here. So now Vishwamitra did change, but it was a long effort for him. It took years and years of seclusion and purification and spiritual practices that helped him to do that. So is something entirely unchangeable for someone? My understanding is that the most important thing that we need for changing ourselves is encouragement, the confidence that I can do it. And if we start with that part of us which seems most difficult to change, then most often we get so discouraged that we just fail. Many people just give up trying to change for the better. So in that sense, for argument's sake, we could say, okay, maybe this time for me. And can people change? Well, I have seen it both ways, and probably you have also. Like some devotees, when they come initially, they are like rough and tough and brash, and then as they start practicing bhakti, they become soft and gentle. And there are some devotees, they are practicing bhakti, but they keep practicing the rough and tough way only. So now, is it that bhakti is working for this person, not working for that person? I wouldn't. If somebody is practicing, and sometimes we say both of them are dedicated devotees. So it's very difficult to say in advance which part of us or which part of someone is changeable and which part is not changeable. In principle, we could say that by Krishna's grace, by one's own determination, we can change everything. But if something is not changing that easily, we shouldn't get so obsessed with that we just lose hope. Prabhupada says in the 7th canto purport that we should always stay healthy. He says we should always stay stout and healthy in mind and intelligence to focus on the purpose of life amidst a life full of problems. There are many problems, and not solving all problems will lead to the furthering the purpose of life. So what is the problem that I should focus on right now? That we have to choose our battles. So somebody may be a Vaishya and they just can't not think of money. If you tell somebody as a Vaishya, you become a Brahmana and then you become a devotee, then for them to live very simply without much money, that might cause them so much torment that they may just feel bhakti is impossible for them. But okay, you just be a Vaishya, you want to earn money, you earn a lot, but develop a charitable spirit. Give charity also. Then that will give them much more satisfaction. They will feel energized by that. Yes, I want to earn, I will give a lot of charity. Like that. So rather than telling them just don't earn money, so for a Vaishya to become a Brahmana might be much more difficult than for a Vaishya to act as a Vaishya and serve Krishna. So in that sense, it's best that each person, maybe with their guides, finds out what is the part of them that is changeable and work on that. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
So I have just one question: is how do we know what is our intrinsic behavior by nature? Because many students, right, they take medical and after some time they leave and then they join some other thing. So if when we are growing up we know what is our intrinsic behavior, we can just follow that line along.
If while growing up we knew what was our nature, we could just move along that. Yes, if life were so easy. I was in Stanford and I was giving a lecture. After that, one American lady came with her daughter and she said daughter has been 12 years in the first year in Stanford. I said, why 12 years? He said she had not failed for 12 years. She's a brilliant student. To get into Stanford itself requires brilliance. But 12 years she had been changing her major to find out what is her calling. Maybe it's engineering, maybe it's medicine, maybe it's humanities, maybe it's this. For 12 years she had been changing. So sometimes that I want to find my calling, that can become an obsession for people. So it's very, very difficult to find the perfect fit. Sometimes we just have to we can't wait to find the best. We have to choose the best among what is available for us. So if we could know our nature, that's great. But if we can't, then just choose whatever is the best among the options available. And later on, as we understand ourselves better, we can do some course correction. So this whole idea that if even devotees, I want to serve according to my nature. Okay, and what is my nature? If you ask your mind, the mind will say, whatever you are doing right now, that is not your nature. Oh, this service is too difficult, that service is too difficult. This is not my nature. So it actually requires some amount of maturity, some amount of even purification before we can understand ourselves. So it's best that we just keep doing what we are doing right now. If you're given a service, do that service. If you're in a career, continue that career. But develop the habit of self-observation. Self-observation means while we are doing whatever we are doing, observe yourself. There are some things which we feel good while doing. And there are some things which we are good at doing. Two things. I might feel good, very good playing kirtan. But if I'm bad at it, then that's not so good. So there is the guna karma vibhagashaha. That means guna refers to quality and activity. So the way I put it is guna refers to our comfort. When we are doing something, I feel comfortable doing it. And karma refers to competence. So while we are going about in our life, doing our services, pursuing our career, look at what we are comfortable doing and look at what we are competent at doing. And then gradually we can move in that direction. Some people may be fortunate and they might just come to know their calling very early in their lives. Some people might not find one calling, but within whatever they are doing, they start gravitating towards something which they are better at. Somebody might say, be in software, but in software they might find that, okay, I'm better at, not so much at coding, but as leading a team. Then their work is not so technical, it is more of relational. Some people say, no, it's a relationship, I just want to do my coding. So while doing our work also in our particular career, we can gravitate in a direction that we are comfortable and competent at. That is the healthiest way, instead of just waiting for somebody or some event to mystically tell us that this is your nature. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, so you have got your...
I would ask, some people seem to never find their nature. And I think Prabhuji's question was more or less, how do we shorten the time from when we ask the question to where we achieve what is naturally our nature?
Okay. How do we...
Is that correct, Prabhuji? That's what I thought
Yeah,
you were asking.
how do we shorten it?
Because-
Prabhuji said sometimes it can take long.
12 years. I mean,
Generations.
how many people have passed without ever having achieved what they truly wanted to? Whether it was not physically available to them for one reason or another, or they never quite figured it out. But so let's shorten the time from when I'm a teenager to when I'm a young adult. I want to know by then, so I can perfect myself in my according to my own nature.
Yeah. So how can we shorten the time by which we can understand our nature and then live accordingly? Otherwise our whole life may go on. So many people may have lived like that. Yeah. It's, as I said, it's tough. But broadly, if we develop the habit of self-observation, we can learn it better. See, like this particular girl, she wasted 12 years of her life trying to find her nature. And she was, I just want to perfect, but 12 years have gone. That's way too much time. So somebody will say, no, what is the use of going through a career if I study for 4 years and that's not my nature? I'll waste my time. So broadly speaking, there are certain structures in life. And those who are Hare Krishna, there are two kinds of people. You could say there are conservatives and there are liberals. The conservatives feel that the structures are good. Don't mess with the structures. The structures have helped people live and grow in their lives. Go along with those structures. So, for example, if somebody has chosen a particular career, somebody might choose engineering. Now, even if they don't feel any calling for engineering, but at least they get a graduation, they get a job, they move on with life, and then maybe as they move forward, they will discover, okay, actually, this is not exactly what I want to do, this is what I want to do. So the conservatives are generally the people who say that go along with the existing structures in life. The liberals are saying these structures are repressive. Just reject those structures. Now just find yourself what you want to do and do it. And it is possible that sometimes the structures are repressive. However, it's not that the structures are always repressive. And somebody who rejects the structure, they are left all to themselves. And actually, you could say, too much freedom can also be too much of a burden. Why? Suppose I go to a supermarket and I want to buy a toothpaste, and there are 300 options of the toothpaste. Now if I decide I want to buy the best toothpaste, the maximum value for money, and I go through all the features of the 300 toothpastes, probably it'll take me days upon days to find that. And just take whatever is the best and move on. So we cannot afford to wait for the best in every area of our life. We have to whatever works, just move on. So now there is, as the liberals, they just say the structure, just give it up. I want to find out my call. I want to find out what works for me and move on. Now some people, for them the structure might restrict them, and for them we need flexibility within the structure. But for some people the absence of the structure can be very, very chaotic. So who is right? Are the conservatives right or the liberals right? It depends. It depends on what the structure is doing and what it is not doing. If the structure is bringing some order in an entirely disorderly life, then that structure is positive. But if that structure is preventing someone from doing that which they are good at doing, which they want to do, they are good at doing, but they are stopped from that, then the structure is not good. So we all start, it is good to start with some structure in our life. Say we have parents engage us to follow a particular path, and at a particular point we will feel, okay, this structure is not working for me. We might choose something else. But the blanket rejection of structures as repressive or as restrictive, that leads not to freedom but to chaos. So for each one of us, we may have to decide that this area of my life I want to have some structure in. Because if there is no structure, we will not be able to do anything. So this area of my life, I will keep this structure. So okay, maybe I want to have a job by which I can earn my living. So at least I'm not every day worried about how I earn my living. Where will the bread on my table come from? But along with that, maybe I'll keep this much time or this much area of my life free, where I will do what I think is my longing right now. And gradually we start evolving. Is this right? Is this right? Does this work for me? Does this work for me? So we can't have too much structure, because then we will feel choked. But if we have no structure, then we will feel choked in another way. We'll choke not by the lack of options, but by the excess of options. And generally, if there are excess of options, what the mind does is, the mind just chooses the path of least resistance. So at least this girl, she was in Stanford, and she was studying and continuing different words. Some people may say, oh, this is not my calling, this is not my calling, this is not my calling. So what do? I just wake up and spend whole day playing video games at home, or playing surfing. I don't know what my calling is. So that me, I don't know what my calling is, but my social media is calling me now. So it's not easy. But if we develop a habit of self-observation, give some room for ourselves to be ourselves, and also give some room for some structure to shape us. It's not that we don't need shaping. We all need shaping. Because even if we have some talent, the talent also requires discipline, dedication to develop that talent. So if somebody has the discipline and dedication to go through a structured process, that will prepare them for the life of freedom, when they can have that habit of structured discipline to move forward in life. So self-observation along with some level of structure is the best we can have. And it's not that if we don't find our calling, that means our life is entirely lost. If we just keep waiting to find our calling, then also our life may be lost. Just start with what you have, and then work towards improving, work toward orienting that life in a way that is in harmony with what we want to do. Okay. So, okay.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Bhaktis and going towards Krishna is what is important. So why should we get bogged down by what am I doing? Am I satisfied with this job? Just do what you have, be satisfied with it, and don't get so mental about it. And so Prabhupada sometimes has said that, say if I know to sing a little bit, but I can hardly play the karta properly, and then I can't learn harmony, it's too late, I'm moving towards 50 or something, so I can't be learning from scratch. So Prabhupada says do with what you have, and that's enough. So why should we always hanker to look at something that's better than what we have?
That's true.
Time
Yeah.
is too short.
Yeah, why hanker for something material? Just you can focus toward Krishna. Yes, that's true. See, again, this is also dependent on person. For some people, there might just be no need for all this, but others may not be like that. Again, we can't just forget it. Some people may feel, I want to do something worthwhile. And if they have that feeling, we can't just dismiss it, oh, you are just material attached or something like that.
But then we have to come back for that desire, right? So say if I'm a doctor and I want to become an engineer, then I pursue that. Then
Yeah,
that
see that way,
it never gets fulfilled.
that way, so that's why there are different degrees. What do I mean by different degrees? That some desires, just fulfill them and get them over with. Say for example, I have a desire to say eat halwa today. I have the desire, I cook halwa, I eat halwa and it's over, it's gone. So some desires we deal just by fulfilling them. They're small desires, minor desires. Some desires, to fulfill them requires a lot of effort. And we decide, is it really worth it? Some desires we decide, although it's coming, I neglect it. No, I can't do this. I have to tolerate it, I have to get over this. So now which desire falls in the category of just fulfill it and move on, just neglect it and move on, or I have to work to fulfill this. It will vary from people to person. So generally, if we can have the worldly desires in the third category, we just forget it and move on. That's good. But it may not be possible for everyone. And when it is not possible, then they may not be able to practice bhakti with the same level of intensity that others are practicing. But then that's what they need to do to come to the level of practicing bhakti seriously. So yes, if we get too caught in trying to find the perfect material situation, or perfect material vocation, or even the perfect material relationship, it's just not going to work. I was in one place and this one young boy, he is like maybe almost 37, 38, and he said, last 12 years I've been trying, I'm not getting married. I'm very frustrated by that. So then I asked his counselor, he's very well educated, he's from IIT in India and he's working in America, very well to do, and everything was good about him, really speaking. So he told me, his counselor told me, that he wants a wife who has the looks of a beauty queen and the heart of a devahuti. So if he wants, you're not going to get like that in the material world. So if we keep waiting for something which is perfect, it's never going to come. So we have to move with whatever is optimal. So that's true. But what is optimal may vary from person to person. But yeah, we have to, this is it. I put enough time in this, let me move on now. That's how it is. Yes, for you.
I guess you just reminded me of something once. This one devotee, Prabhupada disciple, who wants to get married. He's been wanting to get married for so long. And Ranjana Swami, us three were in Maharaj's room, and he looked on his computer, and he was saying he's looking for one of his disciples, and he starts describing this woman, and she's like really perfect. And he says, oh, the only problem is she's already taken by Krishna. Her name is Radharani.
Oh God, beautiful. So we can talk personally. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.